Good morning from Hong Kong. Good morning from Hong Kong. This is Hong Kong time, 10:30, and obviously we have our friends joining us from, of course, other than from Hong Kong. We have, according to our registration record, 70% of our registration registered participants, over 300, are from Hong Kong locally. And then the rest of 28% are from at least 22 jurisdictions, according to my counts last night. And so people come from different time zones, okay? So I must say, good morning or good afternoon and good evening. Let me see, okay. So I'm Linda Lee, okay? I'm Linda Lee. I'm a professor of political science in Hong Kong, and I'm also director of this of a sustainable Hong Kong Research Center at the university. And this is our sixth workshop in our series of workshops being funded by the Hong Kong SAR government, intended to enhance the professional services sector's capacity in exploring opportunities and outside Hong Kong, okay, put it this way. And obviously the objective is not only to enhance benefits, okay, from the perspective of the enterprises, of course, okay, they aim at, of course, developing the enterprises, but from the government perspective and from the academic perspective, obviously we are aiming at a broader perspectives, okay? And and for academic team, we are here to enhance communication and enhance understanding of the overseas jurisdictions, because even though Hong Kong is an international city, for decades, and Hong Kong business and our citizens are very well adapted to communicating or working with people overseas, but things change, right? Things change all the time, and there's so many different societies and civilizations and cultures and policies to deal with. So I think, especially, that's very difficult for all the people to catch up. And so, as part of the process, we, the academic team, seek to have our small contribution to enhance understanding and communication. And so this professional services workshop was planned and conceived actually before COVID time, all right? So we did not anticipate, obviously, we did not anticipate the outbreak of the COVID-19 in 2020, January, in China. That's still being, okay, the outbreak is definitely in China, okay? So we conceived this actually before that, and months before that, and certainly and Myanmar, okay, was already on our agenda because of the vibrant and fastly developing economies and the societies there, and a lot of Hong Kong business have had engagement and the developments there. But then, unfortunately, okay, we see what happened, 10 months ago in the country. So for a little while, we contemplated whether we should change our plan, all right? We contemplated. But after some contemplation and discussion, with different stakeholders, we consider that precisely because things are challenging and things are difficult to grab, okay, to actually have a very good idea of what is really happening and what's for the future, then maybe maybe we should continue to try to have some discussion, and maybe this forum, I mean this kind of a discussion organized by academic team and catering and also targeting the wider members of the public, especially business and professional services group, is actually an ideal venue, all right? Because we are here, okay, from day one is to facilitate discussion and understanding. So I think we believe that we have the skill, okay? We know how to navigate, okay? We know how to navigate difficult ethical challenges. And we hope that so here we are, okay? So I count on the support. We have a very good team, okay? We have our colleagues, and then we have our support of our collaborating organizations. So I'm not going to talk too long already. I said too much things already. So I thank again our supporting, our collaborating organizations, which consist of the major professional organizations from the law, from the accountancy, from the financial sector, from the business sector. I'm not going to name them one by one because the list is long, okay? And we have supporting organizations as well from within the university and also outside the university and in the government, including Hong Kong TDC, Trade Development Council, and other chambers of commerce, and also overseas organizations as well, organizations from the various overseas jurisdictions which we cover in this professionals workshop series. So all the lists of our supporting and collaborating organizations are here, okay, on this slide, and also in our promotion material. And we also thank our sponsor, okay, who generously sponsor part of the program, because this is what is required by Hong Kong as a government, this scheme, because they want us do not just work on our own, okay, just to make sure that this is not only a product of the ivory tower, okay? So this is a little bit of insurance. So without further ado, maybe I should stop talking, okay? Leave all the time for more time for our speakers. So today we have a good list of speakers, drawing from academics, analysts, researchers, project consultants, SOE, special economic zone managers on the ground in Myanmar, and also enterprises based in Myanmar, Hong Kong chambers of commerce, okay, having business in Myanmar. So that, and also we have think tank representatives giving us perspectives from broader from Hong Kong or Myanmar. Okay, so so without further ado, let us introduce have the first speaker. Our first speaker is Dr. Renaud Agrito. Renaud, are you here?
Yes. Good morning. Good evening to all. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. So I leave the time to you, so I won't spend time to introduce you, because Renaud's biography is on all the material which has been sent to everybody. Okay. Thank you, Renaud. Time is yours.
All right. Thank you. Can you all see my slides? Okay, so I assume so. All right, so thank you.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I hear that this is Romain, so thank you, Romain. Thank you, Professor Lee, for inviting me to this workshop. I'm happy to be able to join a debate on Myanmar and take stock of what is going on in this country and discuss especially the impact of the most recent coup there, especially on Myanmar's relation with China. So I look forward to the discussion we'll have afterwards. We obviously have a diversity of profiles and views in this panel and overall workshop. So I think it's a good thing, a good idea. So good morning and good evening again to all. In the next 10 minutes or so, I have only 3 slides to show. I would like to briefly revisit the effects that the coup had, according to me, on the relationship between the 2 countries, China and Myanmar, and somehow challenge some of the received wisdom about the asymmetric nature of that relationship. I'd like to argue that the latest takeover by the Burmese military back in February has rather forced Beijing to pause and adjust once again, rather than really shape the terms and pace of the bilateral relationship and benefit from the most recent turmoil in the country. China has long dealt with military regimes around the world. It's not the only power to do so, of course, but especially in Africa and Asia, it coped with repeated coups there. And there's a large literature, academic literature, that looked at how Beijing has always adapted to political realities there in those heavily militarized societies, but usually without having a strong hands on post-coup local dynamics. And I think that's this is what we are currently observing in Myanmar. So very briefly, China has long grappled with policy dilemmas in the countries, and the last coup stage in February has not, for me, solved any of them. Quite the opposite even. The coup has rather complexified the political, social, economic landscape for China. So let me highlight here 4 of these. I mean, there are a few more, but 4 of these puzzles or quandaries that Beijing has long had to cope with in Myanmar, and look at how the coup of the past 10 months have affected those quandaries or dilemmas. So the first one is linked to territorial dynamics, how to engage with Myanmar borderlands and its center at the same time, when for decades that particular center has been at war with those borderlands. So China has always sought to engage with both, and the recent coup has not changed that perspective. Beijing still wants to deal with Kachin, the war, regardless of who's in charge in Naypyidaw, who wins general elections, or who is legitimate in the eyes of the majority of the Burmese people. The second dilemma is linked to governance and policymaking. And it was a dilemma particularly acute during the past decades of parliamentary experiments under the 2008 constitution. So how to dialogue with a 2-headed central government, with the military side immune to oversight and somehow living on its own, and at the same time, civilian side with a certain level of influence. Nonetheless, for 10 years, we observed that from 2011 until the coup over the economy. We should not indeed underestimate the ambitions that both the USDP and NLD administrations had for Myanmar's economy, and how both successive quasi-civilian governments, even if they're not fully civilian government, the quasi-civilian governments attempted to devise new reforms, economic reforms, however efficient they proved in the end, and influenced the way Myanmar was to be perceived by the outside world. So for 10 years, for a decade, including China. The coup has not solved that puzzle either, because even if it's increasingly doubtful that Myanmar can keep the current constitutional order in place, political legitimacy has remained highly contested since the coup, between the military on one side and its many civilian opponents on the other side, NUG, NUCC, CRPH. I assume that if you joined this seminar, you are familiar with those acronyms that's popped up over the past 10 months. So while Beijing has proved quite reluctant to deal with those those new civilian forces, its central government, Beijing, still seemed to consider that the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi are still legitimate actors. And they are also still engaging with armed groups that are fighting against the central state, the Burmese central state. So the KIA, the Kachin, the Arakan Army, for instance. The third puzzle or dilemma for China is linked to social realities in the country, in Myanmar. How to deal with the upper levels of Myanmar governments, be it military-run or quasi-civilian one, secure investments, sign new deals, expand the Chinese presence in the country without generating a mass popular reaction against Chinese interests. Myanmar remains a society harboring deep-seated resentments against the neighbors up north, as in many other countries in Southeast Asia. An issue that is often overlooked or dismissed, I think, by some observers. But also how to deal with the Burmese leadership without generating a powerful civilian mobilization against that very same Burmese leadership, and not necessarily China here directly, but instead the Burmese elites, Burmese governments, the Burmese military, and in doing so, creating the condition for powerful social movements to emerge in Myanmar, consolidate and push for more democratization. So as observed in the past 10 years, something that Beijing has often perceived as a potential threat to its own interests, indirectly, because social movement push for change, they challenge existing orders, existing system of authority, and thus tend to challenge the stability of things and potentially undermine business. So Debbie Chan, I'm sure she has done some brilliant research on this, and I'm sure she will shed light on these questions later today in this panel. And the fourth dilemma is how to keep Myanmar open to China and Hong Kong without having the country being too open to other foreign competitors or rivals, even, and preventing the latter from getting too close to the Chinese borderland. So how to deal with a neighbor that is no longer as isolated as it used to be back in the 1970s or 80s, but that is now a member of ASEAN, that is dealing with Japan, India, Russia on its own term, and that has attracted far more diplomatic focus than any other neighbors of China, in Laos, for instance. So not only has the coup left China with those major policy dilemmas unresolved, the coup has also deepened pre-existing divides in Myanmar and opened new fractures, new fault lines that I think China will continue to struggle to deal with in coming months, if not years. Among these new fault lines, there is obviously this ever-increasing fragmentation of the political in Myanmar. New actors have emerged over the past 10 months. Old ones also have morphed into new entities, the NUG, the NUCC, and so on. Also, a younger generation, open to the world, has emerged, thrived in the span of a single decade in Yangon, as well as beyond, in the border areas. And all are seeking a new voice now. And all have developed a quite clear sense of agency. And for me, I think that Beijing does not seem to hold yet any keys to any form of dialogue with these new actors that have emerged. There are a few other points we can make. I will only list a few of them because I assume that my fellow panelists today will touch upon them. So there is this return of Myanmar to a pariah status. Myanmar is once more the partner very few wants to deal with at the moment. The coup also has had a destructive impact on many sectors of the formal economy, not all, but many sectors, with many foreign investors leaving, factories closing, and this on top of a pandemic, of course. But on the other side, on the other hand, the coup has also had a tremendous catalyst effect on the underground world and the illicit economy. In particular, I'm thinking of the drug industry, for instance. And again, I'm sure others will address this issue today. The coup has rekindled existing anti-Chinese sentiment in the country. In many places, not everywhere, but in many places, many urban areas in particular. Back in February and March, demonstrations along Bidongsu and Alain in Yangon in front of the Chinese embassies made the front page of international news. So what does it mean for Chinese companies, especially small and medium firms, who have viewed Myanmar as a market and not merely a site for building infrastructures or extracting resources? Boycott strategies since the coup have proved powerful tools, a weapon of the weak, as to use James Scott's everyday resistance to authority. So the Japanese beer giant Kirin is one of example of this, victim of the popular boycott. So I will conclude here and just to sum up. So I think that if China is guided by any strategy in Myanmar since the coup, it's a strategy of adjusting to Myanmar's much evolving local realities, rather than really seeking to shape post-coup dynamics to its own benefits, at least for now. And with the coup, Myanmar has entered a pretty sad phase of purgatory, an ever more fragmented political and social landscape, where the armed forces can still coerce, yet not properly governed, and where I think that both an increasingly militant and active and diverse society and a rising number of non-state actors have emerged as potentially disruptive challenges to China. It's to both its public and private interest. All right, so I'll leave it here and welcome many comments or feedback or questions you may have afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. Well, thank you. Well, Ronald has given us a very good overview, okay, of the situation since February COP, okay, with the focus on not only the situation in Myanmar, but his focus is actually on what's this for, okay, China, and starting with a review of the dilemmas, okay, or the choices, of strategies towards Myanmar from the Beijing point of view, even before the coup. And so I think we have just maybe 3 minutes for quick Q&A. If we have any burning questions from the participants. Let me see whether we have any questions. If you have any questions, now is the time to raise your hand. Well, if not, then Renaud, do you want to supplement?
I think that we can have a dialogue once we have the two or three other panelists. I think that it might leave time for the audience to prepare their questions.
Sure. So let us hear more from other panelists, okay, and then we can have a more discussion. All right. So, okay, thanks, Renaud. Well, next, we have scheduled Dr. Lian Pang, okay, who is the Deputy Director and Associate Fellow of the Research Center for Maritime Silk Road in China to join us, but unfortunately, Dr. Pan cannot make it due to unanticipated other commitments. So his PowerPoint has been shared with us, and we will upload it to our website, okay, after the event. So we have to, so we will move on to our next speaker, Bernard Van. Bernard, are you here? Hi, hello.
Yes, I am here, and very good morning.
Yeah. Yes, good morning. Well, Bernard Van is the president of the Think Cambodia. So he's now in Cambodia, right? You're
Yes,
now
of
in
course.
Phnom Penh. Okay, good morning. This is a new think tank, right? You found this think tank? Not
Actually, it is an online platform.
Okay, online platform. So, Borna is going to give us some perspective from the action, because Cambodia, especially Cambodia, it's the rotating chair of the ASEAN of this year, right? Already started, right? The chairmanship already started. So we look forward to your sharing, Berna.
Yes,
The time
and
is
very
yours.
good.
Yeah.
A very good morning, everyone, and thank you so much, Professor Linda and his team for having me in this workshop. So I would like to share my slide presentation. So do you see my slide presentation?
Yes, very well.
Okay, thank you so much. For the topic, I would like to discuss about the recent political development in Myanmar and from the ASEAN perspective, especially the perspective from me as an ASEAN people. Yeah. So in the topic, I want to focus on three main points. The first point is talk about ASEAN intervention in the crisis, how ASEAN respond to the crisis in the Myanmar crisis after the coup. And the second point is about the Cambodia role as ASEAN chair next year in addressing the crisis. And the third point, I will speak on the way forward for ASEAN as a whole. So now let's start with my first point. So ASEAN leader have conducted a special meeting after the coup, after the Myanmar coup, taking 2 months. And during that is a meeting, ASEAN reach a 5-point consensus. It's mainly talking about to earn the immediate violence, also to ensure that there would be an constructive dialogue among all the conflicting parties in Myanmar, and there would be also an appointing the ASEAN special envoy to address the issue, and they also provide what we call the humanitarian assistance to the Myanmar people through ASEAN Center. And another point is that there would be an the visit of ASEAN special envoy to the Myanmar in order to meet all the concerned party. So now we focus on the ASEAN try to appoint the ASEAN chair special envoy. It took 2 months for Brunei to appoint the ASEAN chair special envoy in order to visit the Myanmar, because due to the difference between about the personality and also whether the ASEAN chair should have the mandate or not. So there is a lot of discussion and controversy on appointing the ASEAN special envoy to the Myanmar. So now I talking about when ASEAN have already reached the 5-point consensus with the military junta. However, the military junta regime failed to honor the ASEAN solution, as it did not allow the ASEAN envoy to meet Aung San Suu Kyi. In response to that, ASEAN include military leader Min Aung Hlaing from the ASEAN meeting, and also from the ASEAN China special meeting also. In this regard, even though the China requests the ASEAN to include Myanmar military leader into the meeting, but ASEAN respond inclusively to the China. It would not invite the military junta to the meeting. So this is a very surprising point from ASEAN in response to the China request also. So now we reflect to the Brunei role as ASEAN chair in 2020. 2021 that Brunei have achieved a lesson in managing the crisis. So, taking to this point is that in Myanmar crisis is very deep issue, so that need to be addressed in closely. And Myanmar, if we continue the Brunei way in addressing the issue, that would be not achieve much the thing. So now I come to the Cambodia role as ASEAN in addressing the crisis. So surprisingly, ASEAN took a new turn on the Myanmar by inviting the military appointed foreign minister to visit Cambodia, and also the prime minister already Cambodian prime minister already have a plan to visit Myanmar next year. And so in this regard, when we take a look on the reason, rational reason of the Cambodia that took the surprise point toward Myanmar, I can see three things. The first one is about Cambodia see the Brunei as ASEAN chair this year's achieved lesson. So in order to address the Myanmar issue, Cambodia cannot take the same practical way as Brunei did if the Cambodia want to achieve some more thing than Brunei. So this is the first reason that Cambodia should engage with the military junta in order to address the issue. And second point is that Cambodia may see that military junta nowadays got my sanction from outsider, especially from the Western world. So in this regard, military junta leader or the regime might want to have a consultation from its peer or ASEAN peer. So taking this opportunity, Cambodia may provide hand in order to negotiate with the military junta and other party in Myanmar. So taking this point, Cambodia should take this opportunity. And the last point is that about the reason or rationale behind the Cambodia decision is that because the Cambodia is very close to China, and China also close to junta. So in this regard, Cambodia can use China as a bridge in order to make negotiation or what we call to speak on Myanmar issue, that maybe the military junta can give some political concession to the solution on the crisis. So this is what the point, the 3 points that I have raised about the rational reason behind the Cambodia decision in order Cambodia decision on the Myanmar. So about the reflection, the first reflection is that about reflection on Cambodia's new approach to Myanmar. Diplomatically, when Cambodia invite military appointed foreign minister and putting his title as a foreign minister, by and large, Cambodia seemed to recognize the legitimacy of the military regime. So Cambodia may also understood that when they engage with the military leader, they may get some criticism about recognizing the legitimacy of the military junta. Yeah. However, the Cambodia approach on Myanmar may affect the ASEAN stand. I mean that the tight stand on the Myanmar. However, this should be the practical strategy of the Cambodia as a pathway in order to address the Myanmar issue. So as we know that the key player in Myanmar crisis is military junta. If the Cambodians or outsider have to solve this issue and do not engage with junta, military junta, I think that there would be not a possible way in order to address the issue. So in this regard, Cambodia has a good intention in order to addressing the crisis, but his decision or his happiness to the way of his to the Myanmar may get back what we call a fireback. Fireback, it means that Cambodia may receive a lot of criticism from its new stand to engage with the military junta. Moreover, if Cambodia could not or cannot address this issue properly, ASEAN would be more likely to be divided on the Myanmar issue. Yeah. So now I come to the recommendation for Cambodia in order to address the issue. So the first, in order to address the Myanmar crisis and while keeping ASEAN unity, Cambodia should contractually consult with all ASEAN member states before giving any political concession or political negotiation with the military junta. So this is a very special thing because Cambodians have been seen that the stand on Myanmar may affect the ASEAN unity. So in order to maintain the ASEAN unity on the Myanmar crisis, Cambodia, before take any decision on Myanmar issue after talking with the military junta, should discuss or make consultation with all ASEAN member states to get a majority decision, especially to engage with the what we call Indonesia as it has been known or has been called it as in Big Brother. So this is very special for Cambodia. So another thing is that in order to address a Myanmar crisis, Cambodia should use what we call backdoor diplomacy. Backdoor diplomacy we can include with all parties, with the military junta, and also with the civil leader also. And this can be a practical way in order to address the issue. So another point is that the intention of Cambodia to solve the Myanmar crisis is that Cambodia may not want to completely have to solve all the issue, but the thing is that Cambodia want to bring all the conflicting party come to negotiation table. So being able to bring on all conflicting party into a table would be a major success of Cambodia as a center next year. So now I come to the last point of my slide. So the last point is that about the way forward for ASEAN. So political crisis in Myanmar should be addressed unless the both conflicting party, the party from military junta and Aung San Suu Kyi, have a political will in order to address the issue first, and with another commitment from other relevant stakeholders, especially from the people. Yep. Because Myanmar crisis is a political crisis, so it is very more likely to use a political mean in order to earn the crisis. This is my comment. And the second point is that Myanmar crisis should be addressed by use the ASEAN constructive engagement mechanism. It means that dialogue would be on the high on the agenda of solving the Myanmar crisis through the ASEAN mechanism and consultation with ASEAN. Yep. And the last part is that because by and large, the political crisis in Myanmar is an issue that involved with the what we call the greatest power got involved in. So they try to compete for the influence. One support, one put a sanction. So less likely the solution in order to address the issue likely need to be agreed upon by the China and US on this regard. So this is my point, and I would welcome all comment and feedback on my presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Bernard. Very thoughtful and thoughts. Okay, very thoughtful recommendations and ideas on a very important. You know what Cambodia as the rotating chair of Action should do and do better. Okay, in order to help with the Myanmar situation. Yes, thank you, Jeffrey. Well, I think we got a couple of minutes for quick questions and comments, if any, at this point of time. Let me see. Any burning questions from the floor? Well, I do have one for you, Bernard. Okay, may I use my prerogative? Well, I can see that, it seems that the Cambodian government certainly the Premier, already executing your recommendations. Don't you think so?
Pardon?
Well, I see what's happening in the last few days, including what you mentioned, in your slide, right? The invitation of the junta to join the next summit, right? Of the ASEAN, and also the forthcoming visit of Premier Hun Sen, right, to Myanmar. So this is a kind of proactive engagement approach already being adopted. This is going to happen, right?
Yes.
By the Cambodia leadership, and this is actually quite along the line of your recommendation. What you recommend the ASEAN? I mean, the Cambodia as the chair of the ASEAN of this year to do for Myanmar?
Because now Cambodia have already decided on what approach that Cambodia should engage with Myanmar. But the thing is that the more practical way in order to address the issue from the Cambodia role as a thin chair is that Cambodia want to bring all the conflicting party into negotiation table. So this is the first start in order to as a pathway in order to address the Myanmar crisis. So this is the first. If the Cambodia took the different approach or different stand like Brunei, Cambodia as a chair maybe as if nothing beside what Myanmar, what Brunei have achieved. So I think my recommendation for Cambodia is that we should engage with the military junta, but however, to make sure that whatever the decision or whatever the outcomes from the negotiation with the military junta should not be exclusively serve or favor in any what we call a great power geopolitical interest, neither with China or the US. It must be favor what we call the stand or the hope of the Myanmar people or the ASEAN as a whole. One more thing is that by and large the Cambodia decision to engage with China, to engage with Myanmar, maybe not got all concerned with the ASEAN member state. In this regard, it is more easily to what we call divide ASEAN more on the Myanmar issue. So for the next step for the Cambodia is that Cambodia should do consultation and our discussion before making any political concession with the military junta. So in this regard, Cambodia can can keep a low risk on the ASEAN division and also the criticism on the Cambodia. So I think I may this is my answer.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Björn. Well, I two more questions for you. I think very quickly. Okay, you'd like to respond to that. First of all, a participant asked, "Can you imagine the time? So how long would you take to bring all the stakeholders to a meeting table, to the negotiation table?" Okay, that's the first question. The second is you mentioned the risk, right? That the Cambodia approach, okay, the proactive engagement approach might backfire. So what is the biggest backfire it could be?
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, it is a tough question, and actually, about how much time we need to engage with the stakeholder in the Myanmar crisis. Actually, like I have mentioned earlier, Myanmar crisis is a very deep crisis and need a long time in order to address the issue. So what Cambodia can contribute is that they try to open the door to the way on to solve the crisis. So this is what Cambodia try to achieve at the first. Just try to open the door for political negotiation. what the main interesting is that political crisis in Myanmar need to be solved likely by the Myanmar themselves. This is the interesting point. But what Cambodia try to do is just open the door and for the both party in order to make the negotiation. So maybe this is what Cambodia try to achieve, and Cambodia know the capacity while that they they cannot have to completely solve this issue. Yeah, so this is my response to the first question. So for the first yeah. So for the backfire, so backfires, I refer to the point 2 points that what Cambodia approach to Myanmar issue is that by and large, it seems that Cambodia recognize the legitimacy of the military junta. However, military junta on this point. So this is like very contradictory stand of Cambodia to the world, even to the UN and to the US, or mostly to the Western country. So in this regard, for the international image of the Cambodia, Cambodia presume a bad image, especially from the Myanmar people. View Cambodia as the outsider try to legitimize the military regime. So this point can be also the backfire, receive much criticism from the outside world. And another point is that because Cambodia have been criticized over the ASEAN failed to issue the what we call declaration in 2020 what we call 2022 that 2000 that Cambodia failed to issue the ASEAN statement at the last ASEAN chair. So Cambodia received a lot of criticism on this point. So if Cambodia on its chairmanship, ASEAN chairmanship next year, and have a decision to vote on Myanmar issue, and then the Myanmar issue is already divided ASEAN member state, and then Cambodia take a decisive approach to the Myanmar issue that take the different approach from the what we call previous stand, like because the Myanmar ASEAN member state is divided on the Myanmar issue is that because on the mainland Southeast Asia is one the ASEAN to engage with the military junta, even though they fail to honor the 5-point consensus, while the ASEAN maritime country they try to ignore or not to include Myanmar in ASEAN what we call ASEAN mechanism, because military junta is failed to achieve the 5-point consensus. So in this regard, ASEAN member states have the contradict view already or divide already on the Myanmar issue. So when Cambodia take a new approach to engage with military junta, by and large, Cambodia can make the ASEAN more divided. So in this regard, Cambodia can draw much criticism and can be the backfires on the approach toward the Myanmar. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So backfire in two main directions, right? One is the feedback from Western countries regarding legitimizing the perception that Cambodia might be legitimizing the military regime, and secondly, it might make action more divisive, right? So, well, I'm getting a few more questions, but I think we should leave this to our panel discussion later, all right? And these questions actually are also related to the Cambodia or the action approach, okay, regarding, not only interacting with the junta, but also with the other stakeholders in Myanmar as well. All right. So because the military regime is only one of the, even though it is very important, okay, very important actor, but it's not the only actor. Okay, so let us move on first. Okay, thank you, Burma, for a while. So stay with us, okay? So you got lots of questions for you. And next speaker, may I invite Mr. Van Mint. Mr. Van Mint is the Vice Chairman of GLP Special Economic Zone in a management committee in Myanmar. Mr. Van Mint, yes?
Yes, good morning, Professor.
Yeah,
and
good morning.
Also, it's my pleasure to be in this event.
Thank you, thank you.
And then
So we are very happy to have you here. Especially, I noticed that you were actually you were the chief planner of the new capital, right?
Yes, that was in the past. Yes.
Wow, wow.
Yeah.
So this is a very amazing. You know, we pay a visit to the capital. So okay, so we look forward to your presentation about this GLP Special Economic Zone. Thanks. The time is yours.
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay, so good morning, everybody. So today it's my pleasure to be on this very important event to try to share of what in our context is a CityU Special Economic Zone. But before we share something on that, I just want to give the highlight of in terms of population where Myanmar stands today. So if you can see from the slide that I presented, so we are at the crossroad. We are in between one of the biggest, in terms of size and in terms of population. We are in the middle between India and China. And also not from that also. So in the south, we are a member of ASEAN country. So if you try to sum up the population figure of this 10-member country, it is about altogether 612 million people surrounding us. And on the west, Bangladesh, it is about 164. So in sum total, if you count all the numbers of people living in the neighboring countries, it amounts to about over and above 3.4 billion. You imagine the sizes of population which are surrounded to Myanmar. So in terms of world context, total, if you assume that the world today is about 7 billion, 3.5 billion of the world population are exactly at the center of Myanmar. So from the business perspective or the investor perspective, and also on the perspective of geopolitical situation, you can imagine what we can be of service to the half of the world community. So this is my first slide that you all can share from me on where we are belonging, our future are. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And not only for that, because of the geological advantage of the country, we have from Bangladesh to southern part of Thailand. So we have a long, coastline amounting to about 3,000 kilometers. So you can just, in the coastal area, you can just point a finger and so see something like, area where you can develop, area where you can make use of the advantage, and area where you can make a good connectivity between the neighboring countries. So since last few years, so we have managed to try to initiate this economic corridor concept, first by trying to make use of the ADB initiative one, East-West corridor. So you can see from the map also on where it started in Da Nang in Vietnam, and it eventually passed through Cambodia, and also Laos and Thailand, and actually it ended up around Yangon. So this is one first initiative that we did last 10 years back. Another one is the very famous Komeng Chao Phu corridor. So most of you may have known of this corridor under the Belt and Road Initiative. And that corridor is already functioning, whereby all the very large, vessels like oil tankers, monthly they are berthing in Chao Phu, and then they pump the crude oil directly from Chao Phu to Komeng. So this is something like the importance of this multimodal and also on the corridor concept that we have been initiated many years ago. So not only for the this oil pipeline, we also have a gateway for gas pipelines to go out from Chao Phu directly to Komeng, and from there I understand that this has been further extended to Nanning. So these geological position of our country and also the economic advantages that people are trying to make use of this maybe have a win-win situation of both countries, and also to the uplift of the national economy of Myanmar. And not only for that, so we have already have a, we call it a multimodal corridor concept with India. So this is a focus of that is to try to get access for landlocked states in India, eastern part of the country. And also it is likely that, it can further extend to, access to Nepal and also to Bhutan. So these are the areas which we have been identifying ourselves, and we have already allowed use to set up similar activities of setting up an industrial zone or special economic zone and making use of all these existing infrastructure. So this is the second message that I would like to express. And finally, for us, since this is our main focus of attention will be for Chao Phu Special Economic Zone, I will spend much more time on giving a presentation on Chao Phu. Thank you. Okay, so generally for SEZ, it is something like a very popular jargon for almost every country, like most the developing countries or to developed countries. So what is the main purpose? So it is something like, as you all may have aware, so these SEZs are all based on economic development. So, but not only for economic, they have another one sense that, these zones are geographically delimited areas. It has been designated as a special zone by the government or by the parliament, and also it may facilitate industrial activities through, something like a regulatory incentive, financial incentives, and we have seen many, examples, good examples, and also sometimes bad experiences. So this is the general concept of what is called a special economic zone. So according to our study in the world, there are about 5,400 zones across 147 economies today. And then last 5 years ago, it was only about 4,000. And now you imagine within this 5 years, about 1,400 has been, newly come up to the world platform. So, and even now today, there are about 500 new SEZs are in the pipeline. So we are among them. So what about Myanmar? In Myanmar, we only have 3 identified dedicated zones. One is Dawei, which was initiated more than 15 years ago. And the latest one is CityU, which we together developed last 10 years ago. And the final one is a Chao Phu. This is the main focus of our presentation today. So apart from other countries, we only have 3 zones, but each zones have different characteristics. One, the way is focused on the eastern part of the country, linking with Thailand, and Tilwa is just near Yangon city, and it just it has a. We don't have a deep sea facility, but it's based on the riverboat. So we have a limitation on accessing big. We cannot accommodate big vessels like something like over and above 1,000 containers coming in. So, but for Chiaopyu, it is one of the best ideal position that Myanmar can offer. So next page, right? So today's paper will focus only on the geopolitical role of Chiaopyu and also why we selected Chiaopyu as a candidate for SEZ development. So this is what I mentioned previously. As I mentioned previously, we didn't select this area on the mutual G2G basis. It is something like a first tender process that we have launched last 15 years ago, and based on the business-to-business concept. And we also employ international consultants to give us some advice on drafting all the related procedures that we have to go through in calling up an international tender. So what's happened today? So last 5 years, the previous government have already accommodate to what the first government have selected. So, and during this international tender process, so we have chosen the best offer that has came across on the table. So it happens that one Chinese consortium have already won the process, and we have been awarding this contract in 2020 when the Chinese presidents visited Myanmar and signed an MOU and also on the framework agreement of this. So this is what happened with Chiaopyu, right? So, and also, so after a brief presentation, then I will go through sharing valuable insights on recent opportunities. Next, please. So what is Chiaopyu? So where is Chiaopyu? So it is located in the Yambie Island. It's not on land, it's on the island in the Rakhine State. It is western part of the country, but it has a direct access to Bay of Bengal. We don't have to pass through a neighboring country, or we don't have to go through a cross-border transportation between one country or another country to reach this destination. So what happened is that after the completion of the natural gas pipeline and crude oil pipeline, so Chiaopyu has become the gateway for China to get access towards Middle East or to Asia, to South Asia or to Africa by making use of this natural gas pipeline and also the crude oil pipeline. So another good point of Chiaopyu industrial zone is, it is not a bilateral process that's been awarded for investors. It has been chosen as the best, based on the best practice and also by the, or the top consultants hired by the Myanmar government to choose the best investor. So it happens to be that, finally we awarded this contract to the CITIC consortium, which is based on the website, and also I understand that CITIC and the three main partners of this consortiums are based in the I think probably it is listed in the Hong Kong Hang Seng Stock Exchange. So you imagine how with the behind the scene, Hong Kong has been already part and parcel of this initiative. So, and what about the deep post? I think the deep sea port, which we have already chosen and located, is one of the best in this area. Yeah, and then it is a natural harbor which can well protected from incoming cyclone and devastated monsoon storms and all disasters. So it has 30 meters deep, in depth for vessels which can equally accommodate very large crude carriers and fifth generation container vessels coming into it. And every month you can see vessels coming from Saudi Arabia or Iran or carrying, crude oil with maybe about 100,000 tons vessels that used to make use of this. But so next, please. And then, and if it is for the market access, we can reach from that place. You can go for national, regional, or global, you name it, and the destination is always available for navigation throughout the whole season. But local availability of labor, of course, there may be some some drawback in getting a fully skilled laborers at this moment. And we are planning to make use of this to give a very strong support for vocational and educational institutions to go in with partnership with us and to train before we actually move forward. We will make use of this as a platform for getting people who are interested in coming to do this sort of a business. So for this sort of investment, you need a good infrastructure such as roads, water supply, waste management, communication. And this we have already committed, and some are in the progress and some on the pipeline. So we will comply with whatever input that will be required for effective operation of the SEZ. And also we will make sure that real estate buildings and also service department will be part of the phase program. And of course, it must be the cost that we will offer will have a very attractive cost, and also and we make sure that the development will be very cost effective, right? So this is the map of the area. So you can imagine, how we have already identified the land use of the overall comprehensive smart subplan. So it is not open sea. We didn't locate it on the open sea. We just make a channel inside it, which channel is a natural channel which can easily protect it whenever there's a big cyclone or monsoon come in it. It is well protected at the area which you can see it on the map as a deep sea port. So this has a place where the depth of water there is over and above 30 meters above the main sea level. So you imagine that unlike other areas where whenever you identify a place for a deep sea port, you have to invest in dredging the area, and also not only for dredging the channel, but also for making use of the land for the terminals to be constructed. But for us, because of the natural area which has already been reaching the certain amount of level, so for the construction investment, it's very reasonable, and we can build any sort of a deep sea port facility at a very low cost. So in terms of land use, we identified not only focus on one area, we spread in such a way that it has different type of industry you can locate it based on the use of, and also on the making use of the awareness of the environmental issues that will come out of this. So here you may come across this area called Yambie. So this is the area where we have already built this place for carrying a crude oil carrier port, and also on trying to make use of this for the gateway for going into China for sending natural gas.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wen. Sorry for cutting you, interrupting you, but because the time is running short. Okay, so maybe we will leave some time for the discussion. Okay.
Okay.
So, we'll move on first, and then we would, when we have time and the panel discussion, participants will have questions for you. Okay, for the JLPA. Thanks, Mr. Wen. I think I need to move on to our next speaker, Mr. Pang Ho.
Kepler.
Yeah, Mr. Pang Ho, are you here? Mr. Pang Ho is the Vice General Manager of Vanguard Apparel Company from Tilawe Special Economic Zone.
Yeah.
Yes. So this is another special economic zone near the at the capital of Myanmar. So yeah, Mr. Pang, the time is yours. Okay, 8 minutes, please. Okay.
呀，不好意思啊，我要说中文了。
哦 ，OK， fine。
可以啊，
请抓紧时间，8分钟，好不好？
因为我们这边是，对，因为我们这边是中国的山东的，一家纺织公司，我们是山东鲁泰，我们公司成立的， 我们正山高档的丝织布面料为主，我们基本上在世界上这几个主要的这个大的服装供应商我们都有合作的。我们的产品呢主要是以服装的棉丝织布为主，基本上那个在8个国家我们有28家分公司。我们基本上我们现在在那个最大的我们那个主要的产品啊是衬衫。我们基本上我们现在70%的产品我们出口到世界上60多个国家，基本上集中在美国、欧洲和日本。我们现在和世界上主要的几个 Burberry、CK 还有 Hong Kong Boss、Armani、Gucci、奥林普还有 Uniqlo， 基本上都有合作，我们是他们主要的这种衬衫面料供应商。我们万国服饰啊，在缅甸投资是2015年正式开始运营，我们投资是1000万美金。我们现在初步设计的产能是200万件每年。我们也有后面追加投资的规划，我们基本上在缅甸有一个5年的发展规划，我们要把投资追加到5000万美金，年产能要达到1000万件的衬衫。我们现在的工厂在迪拉瓦的特区的工厂是1200人的员工，基本上目前现在的这个主要的产品呢出口到欧洲、日本还有韩国。我们现在公司所在的这个位置啊是迪拉瓦特区，因为这个特区呢是离仰光有20公里左右。整个的话仰光的人口呢在600万人。我们整个的话现在因为这个迪拉瓦特区我们现在是用的是free 住免税的，我们7年免税，5年呢50%。但是我们要是追加投资的话还有50%的折扣，这样的话它整个的话有17年的这个免税的这个优惠吧。这个特区还有一种它这个特区还有一种基本上是5年免税加5年50%。要是能追加投资的话还有50%的这个折扣，这样的话他们这种是15年。整个的话我们这个迪拉瓦园区因为他们整个的话建设之初配套是比较完善的。整个的话在仰光的这个工业区里面，它算是配套设施是第一位的。他们现在这个电力，包括他们这个污水处理，包括他们所有的这个服务现在在缅甸的这个工业特区里面，算是最好的了。因为它现在电基本上1年是电力是非常非常稳定的，但是在其他的几个特区经常性这个停电是经常性的。而且我们现在他们园区里面有一个一站式服务中心我们很多事情只要是通过他们那个公共运营系统提交就完全可以解决，时效性非常非常好。而且我们现在他们整个的话，他们这个运营中心的话，可以帮助企业的业主解决很多很多的问题，包括我们这个工人的问题，包括我们整个的话这个安全的问题等等，都需要我们很简单的通过他们那个 ERP 线上系统就可以解决。而且现在园区它整个的话，我们包括这个废水处理、垃圾处理，包括他们这个环境监测，都有专门的日本公司在做。所以呢，整个的话对于我们这个业主的话是非常非常有利的。而且现在就是在缅甸其他的工业特区，你要是投资申请许可的话，需要的周期是比较长的。但是在迪拉瓦这个特区呢， 30天基本上就可以搞定。整个的话，现在就是说他们现在吉拉瓦这个特区，我们通过我们这7年吧，这个投资运营的这个情况来看，比其他的这个工业区优势特别多，包括他们的服务，包括他们的这个仓储运营，包括他们这个工人，包括他们现在有很多的配套，他们在这个园区建设之初的规划是非常合理的。现在有超市，包括有这个工人配套的这种住宅，包括有这个银行包括有这种商业中心还有学校，他们定期会举行这种语言的培训等等等等，就是为了方便所有的这个来投资的这些企业能更好的融入到当地的这个营商环境中。未来呢，他们规划还有医院主要就是服务于现在在这边的这个外国人的投资包括他们这个一站式中心里面有海关啦包括一些咨询啦，包括一些消防啦，包括一些安全啦等等，他们现在都配置的非常非常全，而且整体上规划都非常非常的合理。具体的他们整个的话，这个情况就是未来吧，未来因为我们现在也有初步的规划，因为整个的话，它这个迪拉瓦经济特区的这个营商环境非常非常不错。我们也考察了其他的几个迪拉瓦的这个其他的几个缅甸的工业区，但是整体上我们还是倾向于迪拉瓦这边，因为他们整体上这个配套设施是和国内吧很多这个大的这个工业区的配套是基本上是相同的，所以我们后面我们也想在这个地方再追加2次投资包括他们现在后续的迪拉瓦这边也在改善后续的这个贸易的这个提升服务，包括他们这个银行系统的提升他们现在都在想办法去改善，包括我们现在一些企业的一些诉求，他们定期的会收集这些诉求更好的去后期的去改善，运用到他们整个的话这个贸易提升对这个园区来说现在我们对于缅甸这边吧，对于这个迪拉瓦特区整个的话我们也考虑，要是说缅甸的经济要是想发展的话必须要建一些比如说像迪拉瓦这种非常正规的非常大的这种经济特区，为了外国的投资能更好的有一个服务，这是我们的诉求。因为在包括中国国内现在也有很多这种成功的案例，你包括我们中国的这种发展之初也是先做这种比较大型的吸引外资的这种工业区，所以呢整个的话我们现在我们整体上对于迪拉瓦这个特区我们现在这个评价还是不错通过服务了，包括其他的一些各方面了我们也是在尽量的和这个园区吧有一些诉求，我们也及时的在给他们提他们也是根据我们业主的一些诉求在不断的提高整体上的这个管理服务质量具体的呢我就简单的介绍一下，因为我们也是企业他们包括一些园区的一些政策了什么的了有时候有什么需求的话，到时候也让他们这个园区这些工作人员提供给你们。好，谢谢。
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Pang, for his introduction of his general situation of his company's business and also the investment and environment in Tilava special economic zones. I think the basic infrastructure it's good. Okay, has been good. I think the major challenges I think is back to the current situation. Okay, so hopefully let's hope for the better in the future. Well, I think because of the shortage of time, I'd like to move directly to the next speaker. All right. Next speaker is Dr. Debbie Chen, who is the visiting fellow of Department of Public Policy at CityU of University of Hong Kong. Dr. Chen is a specialist working on Myanmar, Belt and Road Initiative projects, okay, and focusing on the state-society relations and the feedback from the local communities on those projects. I think we look forward to her contributions. Yeah, thank you.
You're muted, Debbie, you're muted.
Okay, I need to start again. So thank you so much for having me in this presentation. I'm going to discuss the impacts of regime types and on the stability of Belt and Road projects in Myanmar. Yeah, during the 10-year political transition in Myanmar, a number of Belt and Road projects have been signed. Interestingly, some of them also encountered setbacks, especially during the Deng Xian administration. The Mitsung Dam was suspended in 2011, followed by the contract renegotiation of the Lapadang copper mine in 2013. The next year, in 2014, the MOU of the Sino-Myanmar High-Speed Railway, or the Jiaoqiu Kunming High-Speed Railway, expired. But then, during Aung San Suu Kyi-led administration, more Belt and Road projects were in the pipelines. So it is puzzling for me that how come the Belt and Road projects were relatively stable in the second half of the political transition in Myanmar, while the government was much more democratic. To an extent, it could be explained by the improvements of the corporate social responsibility programs of the Chinese state-owned enterprises. The state media or the Chinese state media, including the People's Daily, regarded the Lapadang copper mine projects in Myanmar, that is situated in central Myanmar, as a successful case that could win the hearts and mind of the local people. The contracts were signed in June 2010, a year before the start of the political transition in Myanmar. However, when political space opened up in the country, lots of villagers, they were courageous to vent their grievances at the projects. So vehement protest by villagers and societal actors paralyzed the projects in November 2012. The Deng Xian administration displayed its resolve to continue the projects by brutally cracking down on protest and opposition. Then the government was in a very difficult position. It was forced to suspend the projects temporarily. It could only be resumed under a revised contract that was in Myanmar's favor. Alongside the redistribution of gains, Wanpao, the Chinese investors, also promised to allocate 2% of its net revenue to develop CSR projects for the community. Seemingly, it was a case that the company could transform contention into cooperation. Even President Chen Dingfeng of Wanpao Mining also recognized the importance of public engagement and CSR programs that could benefit local people. But then my findings show that despite of CSR efforts by Wanpao, tension in the project area remain. When Wanpao attempted to expand the projects in 2019, it was strongly opposed by villagers again. So what's happened in the Lapadang copper mine area? To be fair, the projects did generate job opportunities. The project hired about 3,700 workers, and 90% of them were Myanmar nationals. It sounded quite good, right? But when we look at the local employments, only 2,500 villagers, they were employed. That means, yeah, only 10% of the affected community members, yet they could get a job at Wanpao. And they could earn about 180 to 270 US dollar per month. Most of the time, only one family member, of each household could get a job at Wanpao. So underemployment is a very serious issue in the project sites. Then how about environmental compliance? Amnesty International found that, because of the copper extraction method adopted by Wanpao, it's used acid spraying instead of acid dropping. So it has a high risk to the underground water safety. Even though, we did see that Wanpao tried to reach out to some of the villages. However, it was very, very reluctant to engage in dialogue with labor unions, with journalists, with non-governmental organizations, et cetera. Also, the latest CSR reports of the company was published in May 2016. So it was rather doubtful that whether the company really have a commitment to public engagements. Noting the tension remained in the project area, what made the copyright project more stable in the second half of the political transition in Myanmar? My argument in brief is the highly popular Aung San Suu Kyi-led administration was less vulnerable to local people's opinion on BRI projects. That's why it had more leeway to enter into bilateral economic cooperation with China. I'm not just talking about the stability of the copper mine, but BRI projects in general. Conventional wisdom suggests that democratic governments care more about legitimacy, while authoritarian regimes pay less attention to public demands. So we can draw a linear correlation between the two factors, right? The level of democracy and the level of government's responsiveness. Interestingly, some studies argue that actually transitional polities are more vulnerable to public pressures. This also explains that why the Deng Xiaoping administration was more responsive to domestic constraints in state-coordinated investments. But then some of you may question that, how about now? Should Chinese state enterprises or other companies sign economic agreements with the military junta? My answer is no. I think in Dr. Egbudu's presentation, he has already addressed lots of political, economic, and security issues in Myanmar after the coup. But generally speaking, the copper mine case or the Belt and Road projects in Myanmar has a wider implication beyond the country. Consider BRI projects as states coordinated investments with Beijing's political and financial backing. We could see that, for authoritarian regimes, they usually make use of political repression to silence any opposition from societal actors. Meanwhile, doing business with democracies are usually have a more stable outcome for businesses because there's a political process to grant legitimacy for the projects. Then how about in the course of political transition? Amid democratization, transitional governments are more sensitive to public pressure, including opposition to bilateral economic cooperation. So therefore, if any projects that bypass societal actors' consents, they are prone to disruption because most of the transitional policies, they would try to distinguish themselves from the oligarchs or from dictators. So if there's political space open up, then projects without public consent are prone to disruption. So for investors, my humble recommendation is, yeah, mind the business weeks in non-democratic settings, especially in Myanmar after the coup. So thank you so much for your attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Well, your message is actually potentially very important, I would say, right? First of all, public engagement is very important, all right, for a project manager, because in order to reduce or mitigate or minimize as much as possible, okay, public dissent. And then to what extent public dissent would cause policy change on the part of the government regarding the projects, right? And that might be regime types, okay, might have an impact, okay. Obviously, okay, this is a tentative, but still, all right, it's also potentially very significant potential importance. I think I would propose we will leave these important questions for discussion, okay, during the panel discussion.
Okay, so in this session, we'll have the sharing from the business and professional sector. And because of time constraint, I would directly go to invite our first speaker, Ms. Shirley Ng. Shirley is the Director, Thailand and South Asia of Hong Kong Trade Development Council. And she oversees the Council's promotion program in Thailand and South Asia. And also, Shirley served as the Secretary General of Myanmar Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Hello, Shirley.
Hello.
Can I pass the time to you?
Thank you.
Hi. Hi.
Hello everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Shirley, the Director of Thailand and South Asia, HKTDC. So I'm currently based in Bangkok and also looking after the promotions in Myanmar. And in the previous section, we have already heard from the the speakers about the current situation covering the social and economic development of Myanmar. So for TDC, as some of the audience may know, that we are a statutory body to promote, to assist, to develop Hong Kong's trade. So for my presentation, I would like to look at the opportunities from another angle, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the RCEP, how it will transform the supply chain in the region covering Myanmar in the long run, and what are the implications for our Hong Kong services providers. So here you can see the GDP of Myanmar. So we all know that the country has undergone the tremendous political and economic reforms in the past decade. However, as our speakers have already covered, that the ongoing political and social turmoil has actually taken a toll on Myanmar's economy, which has already been weakened by the COVID-19 pandemic. So here you can see the key trading partners of Myanmar. So in year 2020, China, Thailand, and Japan are the key export markets of the country, and its key import markets, it's also China, Singapore, and Thailand. In fact, China has close economic ties with Myanmar. It was also the largest source of FDI before the opening up of Myanmar in 2010. But overall, the political uncertainties and also the social unrest in the country did have a major impact on its export and import this year. So about Myanmar and Hong Kong, so we can see the figures. In last year, Myanmar was Hong Kong's 8th largest export and import markets in ASEAN. So from the figures, it is very obvious that it's not as significant as other economies in the region at the moment, but we do see in the future there's still the potential to grow, especially with the implementation of the RCEP. So in summary, the RCEP was signed in November 2020, and it will take effect next month as the minimum number of the members' ratification has already been reached. So it is the largest trade bloc in the world. As you can see from the figures, it represents 2.2 billion people, almost 30% of the world population, and the combined GDP represent 30% of the global economy, accounting for nearly 28% of the total trade. So in summary, the RCEP is widely expected to enhance the economic integration among the members with the measures like to facilitate trade, to minimize the tariffs, minimize the non-tariff barriers, and also to promote e-commerce and increase the market access. These changes for sure will impact the companies in the region. The links between China and Southeast Asia should grow increasingly close as RCEP will improve the relationship as well as encourage the production efficiency among the RCEP members. It is believed that the mainland companies, especially like in areas of manufacturing, consumer goods, professional and financial services, are now developing and implementing the new approach to help themselves leverage the opportunities embedded in the RCEP. So Hong Kong as the international financial center, we are an important transportation hub that we use to handle the outbound investment from the mainland, including those to Myanmar and other RCEP economies, will be the key to such expansion. So Asia has been the global manufacturing center. So with the implementation of RCEP, we foresee that the industrial landscape in Asia will be further transformed. Typically, the manufacturers in the lower cost production sites in China and Southeast Asia, like Myanmar, import the machinery, equipment, key components, and parts from developed markets such as the US, the Europe, and Japan, while China's production with the higher value added and the higher technology content also need the support of the imported raw materials and the intermediate goods. So a significant portion of this are produced in Asia, either by the foreign investor or the local enterprises. So such interdependency not only promote the trade between China and the rest of the Asia, but also advance the overall industrial development in the region. So for Myanmar, it has emerged as one of the most popular production bases for the labor-intensive industry. Since 2011, Myanmar's manufacturing sector has undergone a massive transition amid the easing of international sanctions, the economic liberalization, and also the pro-investment policies. So in view of a good supply of the low-cost labor, many mainland and also Hong Kong companies have already set up the light manufacturing factories in the country. So to encourage the private sector participation in manufacturing and also to foster the industrial clusters. Industrial zones were first introduced in Myanmar back in 1990s. So creating a base for the manufacturing operation in and around the country's major cities. So with RCEP, we will see the lower tariff and also the trade facilitation measures. So in short, the import tariff on more than 90% of the goods will be eliminated in 20 years, with the majority of them will be reduced to 0% immediately, and within 10 years upon the implementation of the RCEP agreement. So tariff preference will be easily enjoyed by most of the intra-regional trade through the application of the uniform rules of origins among the 50 RCEP members. So there will also be the trade facilitation through the implementation of the streamlined custom procedures as well as the inspection. So that will also be the removal of the non-trade barriers, such as with the adoption of the generally accepted technical standards, which mean not to create the unnecessary obstacle to trade. So the RCEP rule of origin will be more accommodating, making it easier for the business to claim the tariff preferences. So the business, as a result, will have the greater choice and flexibility to fulfill the origin requirements, simplifying the custom clearance posture. So the improved market access for the service and also the investment, as the agreement will remove more than 90% of the goods. So for the producer, they are expected to invest directly across the borders to optimize their regional production and the sourcing arrangement, and also to enhance their regional service capabilities, such as distribution and logistics. And generally, the outside members will take on the negative list approach, whereby unless the exception has been specified. So likewise, the investment provision based on the principle of the national treatment and also the most favored nation treatment will ensure that the foreign investors in any given member territory will receive the fair and equitable treatment with the full protection and security. So what are the implications for Hong Kong? Hong Kong, as you can see from the figures, the total trade with the outside members, we have been an important trading hub with these outside economies. So although Hong Kong right now is not an outside member, but it will continue to play an important role to promote the outside trade. As for the services providers, so despite all the outside benefits that I just mentioned, but there are also several challenges to business as we hear from other speakers just now. So whether to relocate the production or the sourcing activities or planning the marketing in the region, limited knowledge of the local markets and also the different business practice, cultures and laws and regulations and the risk management, all this can still create hurdles for the business. And on the other hand, for the RCEP agreement, it is also a technical document that can be difficult to understand. So for example, individual company may not know that whether their goods can be qualify for the preferential terms. So here is the opportunities for our Hong Kong services providers, because professional advice and due diligence will be necessary for the companies who wish to fully capitalize the RCEP opportunities. And throughout the year, Hong Kong is considered by the mainland companies as their first stop for help when they go out or seek to expand international business. So we think that Hong Kong service providers will remain a super connector linking the mainland China companies with the rest of the world. So as more manufacturers, Chinese, Hong Kong manufacturers expand to Myanmar or other ASEAN countries with the outside facilitation, Hong Kong can serve as the multilingual hub for the professional service that our service providers can help translate the ideas or the requirements for the expansion into action. And Hong Kong can certainly be a single contact point to help these clients to establish a presence to operate in different places at the same time. And from our research findings and our interview with the industry players, one of the approach for these services providers to achieve the regional expansion is to find the local partners to support on the local legal and administrative matters. But of course, it is important to set a clear service level agreement with this local partner to uphold the quality of the services. So I just briefly talk about TDC as I mentioned that we promote, assist and develop Hong Kong's trade. And at the same time, we also promote Hong Kong as the two-way investment and business platform linked to the opportunities like GBA opportunities and facilitate the startup development. So we currently have 50 offices around the world, including 13 in mainland China, as well as 6 in ASEAN. So I would like to, so we usually organize different trade activities, exhibition, conference, business matching. So through this platform, we would also like to facilitate any Hong Kong companies if they have the interest in the market. So hope some of our promotional platform may be able to help. And I would like to just quickly highlight a bit the Federation of the Hong Kong Business Associations worldwide. There are different Hong Kong business associations in different local markets. This association are operated individually, and they were usually set up by the Hong Kong people in that particular local market or the local companies that have close linkage to Hong Kong. So through the Federation Network, it links up 46 similar Hong Kong business associations in 35 countries and regions. So these Hong Kong Business Association usually regularly organize the business activities and also different networking events. So it will provide the additional channel for any Hong Kong company if they want to establish the useful contact or gather any practical market information. For sure, they can leverage the network of this Hong Kong Business Association around the world. And for the Myanmar Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce, it is part of the Federation Network. It was established in Myanmar in 2019, and with the purpose to promote trade, responsible investment, and economic relationship between Hong Kong and Myanmar. So again, like other Hong Kong Business Association, the chamber regularly organize like talks and also networking and offer different member services, as you can see in the picture, some of our past events. And if any companies that if you would like to expand to Myanmar or like you want to make some connection with Myanmar, please feel free. We sincerely invite you to join the chamber, and I will be pleased to provide more chamber information to you after the event. And our speaker later on will also highlight more about the chamber's work. So in the interest of time, so I will stop my sharing here.
Thank you, Shelley. Shelley's sharing, very informative sharing about the in particular about RCEP, how RCEP can bring business opportunity for peoples in ASEAN country and Hong Kong. In particular is that it is very informative that how RCEP can bring what are the implications of RCEP to professional service providers in Hong Kong that can enhance our play the role of the super connectors. So thank you very much, Shelley. Then we'll have more discussion in our later session. So next, I would like to invite Mr. Derek Wong. Derek is beside me. Okay, Derek is the director of Wealth Ocean Service, and also a member of the Myanmar Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce. So Derek, I would like to pass the time to you.
Thank you, Professor Phyllis. Thank you, Professor. Hi, everyone. I'm Derek. Oh, can you hear me? It's okay, sound right? Okay. Hi, I'm Derek. I am Director of Wealth Ocean Services. We are also a member of MHK CCI. And continuing on from Shelley, I'll talk a little bit more about Hong Kong businesses in Myanmar. So Hong Kong businesses has actually entered a long time ago into Myanmar. The earliest ones that I know of are garment manufacturers and also fisheries. So since 1988, Hong Kong businesses has invested a total of some $9 billion into Myanmar. And currently there are over 230 enterprises from Hong Kong that are operating in Myanmar. So what are the members of Myanmar Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce? They include some of the big names that everyone will know. There is insurance company, there's AIA, there is Carrier Logistics, there is from the hotel side, there is Shangri-La, of course, Cathay Pacific, and also some of the property developers like Margo Group building some huge comprehensive business residential projects they have in Yangon, and also some of our members involved in the power generation in Myanmar. So our chambers, there are 48 members so far, and we hold regular events, webinars, inviting experts or officials from authorities to talk about the legal status in Myanmar, the current economic development, or policies in general. And some of our, so now we are under the COVID situation. The situation is very difficult in Myanmar. So MHK CCI has run the vaccination program for our members together with the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. And we have helped 264 individuals in Myanmar in getting their vaccinations. Apart from that, we are also working with foreign chambers like American Chamber of Commerce, European Chamber of Commerce, and raising money and providing medical assistance to the Myanmar society. And our joint chambers effort has raised over $500,000 for the Myanmar people. So I'm now going to talk a little bit about my company's engagement in Myanmar. Perhaps I'll highlight a little bit more on the cultural diversity side, given that the other experts, speakers has already talked very much in depth about the SEZ and the general environment. So one thing that, as a shipping company, first thing that attracted our attention when looking at Myanmar is extremely long coastline. So it's some 2,200 kilometers. And at the time we entered, the Yangon was the major port and also the commercial center of Myanmar. Since then it's developed, there is the Tilawa port, able to handle some handy-size carriers or 1,500 TEU container ships. And then after that, there's the Jiaopu port that has an impressive 30 meters water depth that will handle the mega carriers. So on the seaport side, it looks very good on the map. On the land port side, you also have the Yuli land port trading for China, and the Myawaddy and Tiki ports that trades into Thailand. So it looks like a very good transportation hub to us. I mean, the potential of growth there is pretty good. In particular, when Myanmar can develop is the seaport and the supporting land logistic structures, it will be actually a very good bypass for the Malacca Strait, which is one of the major bottlenecks in the Asia-Europe trade routes. And apart from that, there's abundance of fisheries in the Andaman Gulf. The waters and the biodiversity in Myanmar is actually very good also. If you are diving in Thailand, some of them would have brought you into the Myanmar waters, and the water in like the Magui archipelago is famous, and the quality is actually extremely good. So our major engagement at the moment is to hire the Myanmar seafarers and put them on the ships. So the Myanmar population is around the 60 millions, and only 0.15% of the population are registered as seafarers. But these such a small community of Myanmar workers, they contribute to about 1 to 3% of the country's GDP, according to Korean studies a few years back. So Myanmar seafarers are quite famous internationally. Their English speaking ability is quite good, and their seafaring skill is also quite good. So our company first entered into these Myanmar by helping them build their first simulation center as a requirement by IMO. So without this training center to issue the IMO recognized certificates, the Myanmar seafarers cannot sail on the international ships. And if they cannot sail on these international ships, they cannot earn the much needed foreign currencies in US dollars for the Myanmar country. So it's what we did way back, I think like more than 10 years ago. And we think about half the seafarers in Myanmar right now have attended one of our courses in this training center. And in Myanmar, Myanmar is a very Buddhist country. Major religion is Buddhism, and they are very big. They're very generous people. They like donating. Donation is a big thing in Myanmar, and so we also have helped some local villages in the Ayeyarwady region. They have been suffering from leprosy and other disease because of some pollution in the drinking waters. So there isn't really much drinking water treatment facilities in Myanmar, and they have to take it from the freshwater wells by drilling into the ground, and sometimes they're polluted by the rivers surrounding them. So we have helped them install some electricity generation as well, and we've helped over, I think it was over 10, 20 villages in the Ayeyarwady region right now, and and we have helped them all already. There's no more for us to help according to the village elders. And this is the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. It's interesting that to learn that the small population of the seafarers can contribute about 1 to 3% of the country's GDP. It's quite amazing to me. It's the first time that I know that. Actually, I have one question for Derek, is that the simulation training center, is it just for the company's employee, or is it open to Myanmar people?
Yeah, it's public. Actually, we work together with the local marine administration. And so, yeah, it's open to all the seafarers in Myanmar.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So
and in some cases, we had actually, I think some shipping companies from Singapore has once also sent their seafarers to train there as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maritime by nature is very international, so there isn't much borders. Yeah.
Okay. So they after training, they can get the certificate being recognized internationally?
Sure. According to the IMO standard, which is under the UN, yeah.
Okay.
All the international shipping community has to abide by them. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. So maybe we leave the other questions from participants later on. Okay. So now next, I would like to invite Mr. Romain Khaled. Romain, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Hi,
hi everybody.
Hi. Okay,
yes,
so Romain is a risk and reputation management consultant with different experience of providing public affairs and strategic intelligence service to corporation, law firm, and also other nonprofit organizations in Japan and also Southeast Asia. So without delay, I would like to pass the time to Romain.
Yes, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Great. So thanks a lot for the invitation to speak today. And briefly, I mean, I've been working on Myanmar for 15 years now. I first lived in Myanmar in 2006. And I really want to emphasize that, and I'm going to do that throughout my presentation, that the events that have taken place in Myanmar since February 1, 2021, and the military coup are of very deep significance, not only to the Myanmar people and society and the political system, but also to the broader economy, how it functions, how it's going to evolve in the future, and how companies, both Myanmar and foreign, need to adjust and operate and also look ahead. And I think, I feel we have some presentations today which don't really talk about the fact that Myanmar post-coup is not like Myanmar pre-coup, and explains what that means in terms of how businesses should behave for their own interests, but also for the interests of the Myanmar stakeholders. And so I think it's really important to emphasize that. Yeah, and again, my point here is not that one should not do business in Myanmar. That's not what I'm trying to say. I know that there are some stakeholders, some international unions, some international NGOs or advocacy groups who say that it's not possible to do business responsibly in Myanmar anymore since the coup. This is not my view, but in order for businesses, including from Hong Kong, to do business responsibly in Myanmar, also for their own interest, because if they misbehave, they are going to suffer. It is extremely important to look at the situation with open eyes and not sugarcoat it. And I think, again, this is in the broader interest of the business community to look at the situation as it is. And it is my job as a risk and reputation management consultant to tell to my clients what exactly are the challenges that they face in Myanmar now that a coup has happened. So yes, I think I have only 2 slides, and I'll try to be relatively short. And so really my first point, which is completely related to my broader point, is that you can't consider doing business in Myanmar like business as usual, and that's for the foreseeable future. Again, the economic growth that we saw in an economic development that we saw happen in Myanmar, especially between 2012-13 until 2017-2018, so post 2010 elections and pre-Rohingya crisis. This was especially related to the political reforms, political opening of the country, which the military had agreed to, and that led to the NLD being elected to power in 2015. And this is this political process that allowed for the return, for example, of international financial institutions like the World Bank or the ADB, that allowed them to return to Myanmar, to resume loans and other type of support, including technical support to the government. And right now, for example, a lot of technical support to the government is suspended because these international financial institutions, it can also be aid organizations, including UN organizations, they don't know or don't want to interact with Myanmar government officials, given that the state is now under control of the military. And they can't interact with them in some cases because they have internal policies. That means that they cannot support a regime in the following a coup, or it can also be a decision. Actually, even the AIIB, so the China-led Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, they have also been quite unclear about what they will do in Myanmar moving ahead. There was some lack of clarity in an interview, and then they clarified they will be following international standards. So we'll have to see what happens. But what I mean here is that the crisis is impacting everybody, including Chinese-led entities, and unless the political crisis stops, it's difficult to see how there can be a return to normal. My second point here is that Myanmar should now be considered, the whole country, as a conflict-affected high-risk area. This is a term used by the OECD. I mean, Myanmar has been affected by internal conflict for many decades, but until recently, this was restricted to certain remote parts of the country. Now, you have daily events of violence in the main urban centers, especially of Yangon, Mandalay, even Naypyidaw. You have improvised explosive devices exploding. You have executions of murders, assassinations of officials or military forces, people who are seen as being associated with the military regime. So yes, maybe that will not impact you as a business, but just as a reminder back in March, I believe, when you had these very large-scale demonstrations, a bank employee from a Korean bank was shot and died because the bus that she was in did not stop properly at a checkpoint, and the soldiers there panicked or misbehaved or badly responded, and they shot and they killed her. And again, I think these types of incidents are going to continue to happen. Of course, if you live in a nice condominium and you just commute to work, and I mean, you are in Golden Valley, it might not be necessarily a risk to you to some extent, but you don't know. And again, the situation is not what it used to be. Myanmar used to be relatively safe. By the way, there is also an increase in criminality because of the breakdown in law and order, which affects company employees, etc. And that brings me to the case that these conflict-affected high-risk area lenses, you should not only apply them to you, what that means to you as a business, but also how, when you interact with your environment, what type of risks do you pose to them? So for example, if you run a factory in Lantaya, which is a big industrial area, a township where you have large industrial areas, and you have a garment factory there, for example, Lantaya, I believe, is still on the martial law, meaning that you have some type of curfew. If you are arrested, you don't go to the police for processing, but you go directly to some military camp. I mean, this type of stuff. And so you need you should be aware, if you have a factory in that area, that if you bring your employees to work for you at a certain time of the day or of the night, maybe they're going to face higher risk of being shot at. This is what we are talking about. So again, I think it's important to be open and transparent about the current risks faced in the country right now, not sugarcoat it. My next point is that currently there is no downward trajectory. There is no off ramp, and so it's a downward trajectory, meaning things are getting worse. And I listened to the presentation this morning, and I mean, it's difficult to see what type of solution can come next year thanks to the support of the Cambodian chairmanship. I'm not an expert on that, so I leave it there. But again, look, Aung San Suu Kyi was recently charged. I think 4 years in prison, reduced to 2 years on the house arrest afterwards. It's the first of the many charges that she's facing. And for every charge that she takes, there will be a response by the international community. After the charges, we saw the US, Canada, and the UK adopt a new round of sanctions against Myanmar, and the EU is also talking about it. So this is going to continue, and that's internationally. And in the country, explosions, violent response by the military, not only in remote areas anymore. The other day, I think a week and a half ago, you had a military truck run over young peaceful demonstrators in downtown Yangon. Imagine the type of psychological shock that this gives to people in the middle class and the whole population. So this is not going to get better in the short term. And my last point is that there will be no return to normal until the political crisis is addressed. I know that some people say, well, it might be like Hong Kong, it might be like Thailand. Once the crackdown is over, things will go back to normal and things will settle. I think this is a complete misreading of the situation and a complete misunderstanding of who are the actors at play and what are the dynamics unfolding. So that's for the context. And now I'll move on to the practical advice to businesses. Again, my point is not that you should not be doing business in Myanmar, period. But if you are considering doing business in Myanmar, or if you are considering, or if you are already in Myanmar, you really need to heighten your risk management policies and practices. I mean, first you have heightened compliance. So I talked about sanctions before. And here, maybe for some Hong Kong companies, well, I mean, maybe compliance will be less important than with sanctions. I mean, it can get complicated. But Anyway, on compliance, let's talk first about sanctions. You have a lot of entities that are sanctioned. The US, UK, and Canada, in the recent round of sanctions, they put on it the Quartermaster General's Office, which is a military entity that has oversight over a lot of land plots, including major land plots in Yangon, where you have commercial and residential developments. So can you, if you are looking at doing property development, can you rent land or lease land from an entity that is sanctioned by the US, controlled by the Myanmar military, and pay money to that entity without being concerned about facing retaliation from the US regulator or other type of regulator? That's compliance. The second risk is about reputation. And there, maybe you don't worry too much about being fined. But if Myanmar, let's say you have commercial development on land owned by the military, or let's say you are in business with the military producing a consumer good like beer, which is the case for Kirin, the Japanese company. Your product, because it benefits financially the military, will be boycotted. And if you look at Kirin's recent financial results, you will see that their sales, the sales of their beer, including Myanmar beer, went down tremendously after February 1 because of boycott, not international boycott by the Myanmar consumers. My next point, and I'll finish shortly, my next point is about heightened human rights risk. And there really, the point, it's not only about you, it's also about the people who work for you, the communities around you. So the workers, the communities, the consumers. By doing business in Myanmar, what type of risk do you expose them to? And here, let's talk about Telenor, the Norwegian telecom operator, which has announced that they are trying to leave the market. Now it's difficult for them to sell, and who's going to buy? Anyway, it's ongoing. But basically, they tried to stay in Myanmar, and at some point they had to pull the plug because for themselves, their foreign executives, and they disclosed that, were not allowed to leave Myanmar. Basically, the military regime said you cannot leave. I mean, what type of risk to your staff is that? And then the second point was that the military made a request about data sharing to them, basically the installation of surveillance equipment inside the telecom operator's own data center and operations, which they couldn't agree to because of their international ethical standards. And so anyway, you're going to have to face these questions and consider what that means and what type of human rights violations you could be implicated into as a business. And again, there is the issue of complicity of business in human rights violations. It's something to consider very, very cautiously. And my last point, to bring it to the very, very operating level, to the ground, it also means what I just said, that just doing business in Myanmar has become very difficult. I talked the other day with a Myanmar private equity executive whom I've known for many years. And he said, look, first, we as a private equity firm, we have decided to stop all new investment in the country. We can't do it at the moment. It's just not appropriate. But second, yes, you have some businesses who are saying, oh, some assets will become undervalued, or some people will go, there will be some restructuring, so there will be some acquisition opportunities. We can come in at a cheap price. And he said, maybe, but the reality is that if you don't have good operational expertise on Myanmar, already built by being there before, very strong understanding of the country, it's going to be very difficult for you to deliver and to deliver successfully. So anyway, sorry for going over time, and I'll stop here and happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Romain, for sharing those by highlighting those different types of risks for business operating in Myanmar now. So because we are running short of time and it is far behind our schedule, so we'll cut off the break for this and would like to go directly to our Q&A session. So Linda, can I pass to you first?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think this is now our final session. We have Q&A and discussion. Okay. In this session, we have a discussion. Let me let us and I will moderate this session together with Phyllis Mo. Okay, Professor Phyllis Mo. We have a discussion joining us. Thomas Chow. Thomas, are you here? Hello.
Hello, good morning from Yangon.
Hi, hello, Thomas, Thompson. Thompson is welcome to join us. Okay, Thompson is as he said, okay, he's now based in Yangon, and he's a former associate editor and business editor of Myanmar Times. Okay, so very important to bring in perspectives, okay, from people on the ground and outside the business circle. Okay, because we heard obviously voices, okay, within Myanmar from the business and from the industries already, right? And so you are from outside that area, but as an editor and journalist, I suppose you keep in close touch with all walks of life, right? So so I think so first of all, let us have our comments and observations first, and then we can have some more discussions and responses to some of the early questions raised. And in the meantime, for the participants, you have any questions, then you please put in the chat box, okay? Yeah, Thompson?
Thank you, Professor Lee. Thanks for inviting me today. I think the earlier two panels touched upon a lot of topics already, ranging from overseas investments in Myanmar to what responsible business means. I think I'll first off echo what a lot of points that Romain has already raised earlier. I think about how business people on the ground, no matter whether you are a Western multinational or Hong Kong or Japanese investor or local businessman, is the difficulty and the importance of recognizing the difficulty in navigating the Myanmar market since February the 1st. I think Romain mentioned the tragedy recently in the news about the military truck reportedly going through a group of peaceful protesters in Yangon. And of course, as a journalist myself, I've witnessed firsthand a number of personal tragedies by my fellow journalists and friends on the ground. So I must emphasize that the human toll in Myanmar since the coup is something that has and will continue to have a huge impact on not only the crisis, but also on the entire economy and how investors react. I think in particular, I like to also emphasize that this is an ongoing crisis. As Romain also mentioned, people thought that, at some point, I think back in February and March and April, some of the business people I spoke to thought at some point the regime would be able to quell the resistance and the opposition, expecting within a few months. But now we're in December, end of the year. The coup is reaching the anniversary next month. And we see no signs that the resistance, either in the form of peaceful resistance like consumer boycotts and civil servants on strike, or in a more sort of form of armed struggle across the country. Neither forms have resided or subsided in any way. I think speaking about how business people react on the ground over the course of the last 10 months, it's quite clear that, some business people have found a way to be able to deliver and make a positive contribution despite all the risks and difficulty. I think Derek earlier mentioned that the Hong Kong Chamber, which I'm also a fellow director alongside Derek and Shirley, the Hong Kong Chamber provided a vaccination program for our members and employees. And also the Hong Kong Chamber joined forces with other foreign chambers in town to raise money for COVID-19 emergency relief assistance for people back in, I think, July, August, and September. And I think these are areas where the private sector may have a role to play as long as they know how to navigate the whole difficulty in compliance and engagement with whoever's in power. But also, I think at the same time, we saw a lot of criticisms from civil society and media on particular companies with links to the military. For example, we have some Hong Kong listed companies, power companies, and luxury hotel brands being found to have direct links on either military-owned land or have some form of contracts with military-owned companies. And I think subsequently, particularly for those who are consumer facing, would be in a very difficult situation unless they found a way to get out of it and explain to the public how they would mitigate the human rights risks of being seen as directly contributing to a company in Myanmar that is funding the regime in power. I think we also see the parallel national unity government, the underground civilian government set up by some of the ousted and elected lawmakers. I think they have also explained since they were set up in April and May that they have 3 types of policies towards investments. And I think a lot of people on the ground, diplomats and investors, have said they have paid attention to it, including Asian companies. They have paid attention to the demands and policies of both the military regime and the parallel national unity government. I think in particular, they were talking about investments being approved before the coup, which is by the Thein Sein government or the Aung San Suu Kyi government. The NUGs are largely okay with it. But those approved afterwards, basically the position by the underground government and by all of the activists and protesters is that no new approval, no new investors should come in right now. And of course, you have the other question of the links with military companies directly. So for those companies, doesn't matter whether you come in earlier, before February the 1st or after, basically, as long as you have a direct link with some of those companies, you are in a lot of trouble. I think Romain also mentioned, and I think earlier other speakers also mentioned some of the companies being caught in dilemma of exiting or staying. Telenor, for one, have found it very difficult to navigate and leave. I think they felt compelled to leave after the pressure to comply with the, I think, mass surveillance, which my understanding is could put them into a direct violation of the European sanctions law or sanctions regulations if they turn on the surveillance. So now they decide to leave, but I mean, we are talking about half a year on, they haven't really left. I think I'll quickly end up my contribution, my brief comments here by emphasizing that the situation is very fluid. I think some business people think that the whole crisis would end soon. And given that if it ends soon, things will resume to a sort of new form of business as usual. And so people really think, well, you can go back to at least do work on things that the population really needs. For example, education, for example, healthcare. I mean, some of the embassies told me they're worried about a 4th wave on its way in Yangon. And in terms of climate change, resilience, population, displacement of peoples. But I think on the other hand, you have many Myanmar people, protesters and consumers thinking and wanting to fight on the good fight. And I think in this instance, how investors should come in right now with all the crisis, I think really depends on what happens next year, over the course of next year. And of course, over the course of how, whether there could be any possibility of the dialogue between different sides. Right now, I don't see any possibility of a dialogue, to be very honest. And I think that's why overall my input from Yangon would be investors should be aware that it is nothing about business as usual here. They need to be very careful every day and keep updating themselves on the latest security and political situation. I think that's the best way to navigate the way forward if you decide to stay.
Okay, thanks, Thompson. Well, I think thanks for your contribution. I think that's a very good start to our panel discussion. Okay, we should stop. Okay, by time of 1:30 Hong Kong time, and now it's 1 o'clock, so we have 30 minutes of for discussion. So all the panels, I mean all the speakers, okay, of today, any questions, comments? I think now it's the time for us to share and interact. And also, I think maybe to start with, I recall that we have actually a couple of questions from the workshop, okay, from the audience. For instance, I think right after Bernard's presentations, we have a bit of some discussions, okay, and then a question was asked, okay, about Cambodia's approach to this Asian chairmanship over this Myanmar crisis for the proactive engagement, okay. but the emphasis seems to be put on engaging the junta, as far as what we heard, okay, from you, Bruna, okay? So I think a question was put to you, whether you have any recommendations, put it this way, okay? Or maybe your observations or your anticipations of about proactive engagement with other parties as well, okay? Especially other parties within Myanmar, the parallel government or other forces, okay? So that's one question to you. And another question that I registered, okay, is for Mr. Wen Mint. I think that is a very generic question, in fact, okay? That the question is about, because there's a lot of foreign FDI investments, okay, or obviously, as he said, okay, special economic zones is for to attract FDIs. Let us bracket, okay, I know the situation is very challenging, but let's just bracket a little bit, okay? But the generic question is, okay, you are looking into the very long term, okay, maybe the longer term, okay? So any thoughts to really to beef up the FDI and the local industry so that the spillovers of the investment, okay, would be maximized rather than we have two worlds, okay, in Myanmar, like in many developing countries, okay. So that is, I think, a generic questions. Another generic questions arising from public engagement is that, for instance, in Debbie's presentation, she emphasized the importance of public engagement, right? And also Derek's presentations, actually their firm is do a lot of this CSR and public engagement, but any insights or any observations about more effective ways, okay, to engage the public? So I think those are maybe three generic or more important generic questions. So the first one, it's I think it's very hot. It's actually about the current situation, all right, especially how the Cambodia's approach to help, seeking to help to relieve, to mitigate the crisis, okay, as the chair of the ASEAN, whether you have any thoughts about other than the junta, okay. So shall I throw these questions to the panel? And anyone would like to start? Hello.
Well, if I may, I'll jump in if nobody wants to take the first crack. But I think it's I think I just think there are things you can do in Myanmar now, and there are things you cannot do, given the recent context as a business. And I think what Thompson said, about education, healthcare, etc. And I think that's what a lot of organizations are looking at the moment, including aid organizations, international financial institutions. Actually, I think there is a very broad consensus that leaving, abandoning, sanctioning is not the way forward, and that business has a role to play in helping Myanmar continue its economic growth and at some point return to political transition. But in order to, and so that's where the risk assessments are taking place. But at the same time, I think it's very important for businesses to be to have red lines and to say this we can't do because this takes us into dangerous territory. And I'll give an example here that is close to my heart. Being French and being based in Tokyo, you had a hydropower dam that was supposed to be developed in a northern Shan state, so near the border with Yunnan, with China. And it was being developed jointly by EDF, the French state-owned utilities company, and Malubeni, which is a Japanese trading house, a Japanese conglomerate. And a few days after the coup, they put out a statement saying that they were suspending the project, which in a way is too bad because Myanmar, as we know, needs more electricity. Some experts have said that hydropower can be, if well done, has actually low carbon footprint, is a good source of energy in this time of climate change. So, a lot of good reasons for this project to move forward. And, from my perspective, also because they suspended the project, companies that take, human rights and responsible business very seriously and act on their policies. But what they said is that we cannot proceed because our project will require land acquisition on a large scale and displacement of hundreds, if not thousands of people. How can you do that responsibly in a country controlled by a military regime, which, as we see, acts in an extremely violent manner in disrespect of international humanitarian laws? And now you look back at the 1990s when other companies were operating in the country and decided to do it, including French company Total and its American partner Chevron, and they developed the Yadana pipeline by then and the offshore oil and gas platform. And Chevron was sued in the US by a group of community leaders from that region, the region around the pipeline. And at the end of the day, they settled, I think, in the 1990s. They were sued for being complicit in human rights violations. It was forced labor, other type of things like that. So anyway, I think, again, education, healthcare, there are many things that you can do in Myanmar. And I think Myanmar people really want also to keep good jobs and have good opportunities, and they want to have access to the internet and all of that. It's not, but it's just that you need to be very open for when you do your risk assessment, you really need to go deep. You need to have open eyes. You need to talk to a wide diversity of people, including people who do not agree with you, and maybe people who are not pro-business, but who are rights holders, who are your stakeholders, and you need to listen to these voices. And so thank you also today, Linda, for organizing this panel with such a diversity of people, so we can hear different views as to business in Myanmar and with Hong Kong.
Thank you, Roman. I think that is precisely why we want to continue this discussion despite all the difficulties. Okay, Bernard, maybe should I put the microphone to you? Okay, because I think those questions to you are actually quite challenging. Bernard, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Professor Linda, for giving me a question. Actually, when we talk about as Cambodia as a CSHK in order to address the Myanmar issue, it is a quite challenge and a tough job for Cambodia in order to find the solution in the Myanmar political crisis. However, there is also a room for Cambodia in order to engage with all the concerned party in order to address the issue. So as of now, Cambodia have already appointed a Cambodian Foreign Minister Prak Sokhonn as a ASEAN Chair Special Envoy to work on the Myanmar issue. So in this regard, I think Cambodia as ASEAN Chair take a lot of hard job to deal with the issue. But for the recommendation or solution or the experience that Cambodia may bring to the table or the way that Cambodia should address the issue, it has been talked a lot about that Cambodia should use its experience in implement win-win policy, which have been on the Cambodian internal conflict in 1998. There is very experience that means the Cambodian Prime Minister may use this his experience in order to address the issue in Myanmar. However, this is because of the time we have a different time and different situation. Maybe more than likely the Cambodia not might contribute to solve the political crisis in Myanmar. However, for my point of view is that in order to address the political crisis in Myanmar, it is just the partly contribution for Cambodia as ASEAN Chair. The first one is that Cambodia should ensure that they must use the win-win solution approach to deal with all the concerned party. So this is the first thing that Cambodia need to think of. Another point is that whatever the Cambodia approach or stand on the Myanmar issue must ensure that it is not exclusively favor any political geopolitical interest of any great power, for example, the China or the US, and must serve the interest of the Pumi people and ASEAN community as a whole. So being able to bring, as I have mentioned earlier, is that being able to bring all conflicting party to negotiation table, it may be a major success that Cambodia want to see. So in this regard, Cambodia, after engaging with the military junta leader, the next step is that Cambodia should engage or talk to the civil leader or Aung San Suu Kyi apart. This is a crucial way that Cambodia should do in order to address the issue. And the last point is that, like I have comment already, whatever the solution or decision Cambodia after engage with military junta, Cambodia must consult with other ASEAN member states to get a majority decision or majority support for give any political what I call political concession to the military junta. This is what Cambodia must do in order to unite ASEAN. However, in the context of great power rivalry, it is by and large the political situation in Myanmar must be agreed upon by these two big guys. I mean that if these two big guys try to play against politics against one another by one support, by one give a sanction, the political solution in Myanmar is we need a very long way in order to address it. And when the great power involved in the crisis, it is very difficult to address the issue. Yeah, so this is my point. Thank you.
Sorry, maybe Bernard. So it seems to me that from your answer, your reply to the question that whether the Cambodian approach to the Myanmar crisis, okay, as an ASEAN chair, will include engaging the other, inside Myanmar alternative forces, seems to be not very positive, right? Because you emphasize, you would certainly have to engage with other ASEAN member countries to get that majority view, if not total consensus. And then you need to engage with the two big powers, right? And then because they certainly are, if not Euro, also Euro as well, right? Am I correct in my listening to you?
Yes, of course. Because Cambodia, actually, it's Cambodia in the current context. It has a very less power or less influence in order to address the Myanmar issue. However, Cambodia just have the role as ASEAN. They can have this regional role in order to engage with all the concerned party in order to address the issue. So this is what a Cambodia can do. And the complete solution to Myanmar crisis can be achieved unless the external conflict party in Myanmar agree upon in order to negotiate. And another thing is that the outside party, the outside player like ASEAN and also the great power have to be agreed upon on the issue. Unless Cambodia just, I do not expect much from Cambodia as ASEAN chair to address the issue. However, Cambodia just play an open the door role. They just play their role in order to open the door to the negotiation table. This is my point.
Okay, thank you. Fair enough. Okay, I think because obviously, multiple parties have to put effort into it. Okay, so we should not, put too much. Pressure. Okay, on one country alone. It's not. Well, Debbie, you got a question? Yes.
Yes. Yeah, first of all, I would like to clarify that even though public engagements, yeah, really matters. However, it cannot mitigate the business risk if the bilateral economic agreements themselves are illegitimate. But actually, I have a question for Wu Winmint. I would like to know about the recent developments of the Jiaoqiu Special Economic Zone and the deep sea ports. Yet, given the situation after the military coup, I would like to see how enthusiastic CityU is and whether there are new agreements signed between the military government and CityU. And also, I would like to know about the process of land confiscation in Jiaoqiu area. Thank you very much.
Okay. So I think I will just give the audience the situation based on the study that we are making, right? Okay, so the general information is that, if you try to take the note of this map, recently I heard in a newspaper saying that, shipment from China to Singapore, it's something like a bicycle container, and the shipment reached Singapore after 40 days. You imagine what is really happening in the war, in this supply chain crisis, right? So if we can see from the map, Hong Kong and Singapore is just between a crow fly, I would say, but now it takes about 40 days. So you imagine we are comparing the strategic location of Myanmar with the situation. So we have highlighted the different travel times between our port of exit and the way that how many hours you can reach this international shipping route. This is one message that I would like to say. Okay, and if we go back to your question of the situation of this Jiaoqiu, as you said, so we are previously, we belongs to the first generation of this management committee members, which we involved with calling up international tenders in around 2000 and something like 13, starting from 13 to 15, right? And now we have been reassigned by the recent military government to try to carry it forward, to move ahead with what is really, what we signed with the Chinese consortium CityU. So it has not been suspended, or it has not been rejected. So the product will be ongoing. But at this moment, what we are doing is, we are in the process of calling EIA and SIA, contractor to try to overtake this detailed study for this deep sea port project. And this is one thing. Another one is, another one contractor has been doing geotechnical survey for all the construction works that will be carried out in the next few years. So meanwhile, from our management committee, we are trying to reposition ourselves how to attract potential investors, not today, but not tomorrow or next year, but we are trying to give a position for future investors who would like to take use of our locational advantage and doing business. But if you listen today, you may heard only from one investor who have already shared his observation from Pilawa. But the rest, I would frankly say that if you listen to that, the message that one will get will be very scary, or very it's not a good environment for doing any business in Myanmar. But we are not talking about today or tomorrow. We are talking about next 2 or 3 years horizon. So for Hong Kong, so it's an island state, and for Jiaoqiu also, it's an island state. So if you make use of this locational advantage for investors, we are thinking in terms of only investment opportunities. We are not thinking in terms of bringing in money and starting to do business tomorrow. So for long-term investors, since most of your audience are all investors and businessmen, so imagine, if you are thinking of migration of your business to Jiaoqiu to take advantage of that particular place, not to try to let the benefit goes to the Myanmar, but to make sure that your investment has a directly a good positive outturn by sending cargoes to Bangladesh or to Calcutta or to, Madras. So, this is one way of thinking things of what you can plan ahead. According to our recent study, if you are doing business in China, now they have difficulty in getting power supply for running the business. Some factories have to close down for 5 days, and some have to close a whole day, but only can do business and in the late hours or 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So this is the impact that has been happening in China because of the COVID-19. But we never, we cannot assume that COVID-19 will be over next year or next few years. So we have to prepare for the worst, and then you have to take the opportunity to try to see what's the best option for you to do business. So I believe that this City Hong Kong University has taken this chance to make use of the business community in Hong Kong to get a message from who participates in this forum to try to say what's the next move forward for us or you to try to do business in the region. So I would say Yangon, Chao Piu, they are well prepared for whatever outcome that is bringing forward to investors, and then we will make sure that we as recipient owners of this KPSC that we will comply to whatever new regulations, new commitments, and then new restrictions that has been imposed or will be imposed by whatever communities. But we will make sure that the investors who come into our country, they will be well protected, and we will make sure that they will have a good opportunity of doing business not only with the country, because they are not going to do business with the country for coming in, because as one of the participants mentioned, that we are very, it's a country of high risk, and then it's something like we have a security risk. Just leave it aside for that. But for thinking of moving out from one place to another to get the opportunity on try to move ahead for your next business venture. So I think I have already shared in my presentation of what things can be done and what will be the challenges and what will be the opportunities. So for Hong Kong businesses, I would rather clarify to you and then highlight that when we open up in 2020, the first investor who come in to do business is a Hong Kong a businessman. He joined a partner with the Myanmar Port Authority to build a seaport, Pilua. And then he's now still, after 20 years, they are going a good business and also make use of the locational advantage. And then, of course, there is a risk, but he tried to, cover all the risks, and then now they are prospering. And now also in Hong Kong company, a property developer, they are in Yangon building a high-end condominium. And there are another one business community from Hong Kong who have already established a wholesale, a wholesale market in the city center last year. But because of the crisis, they are still willing for the launching of the official opening of this market. So these are the adventurous opportunities that they took charge and that they risked their, venture. But they never, gone bankrupt, or they never been, hassled or by the government. So these are for the Asian members, they understand of the risk and any sort of challenges involved. But we are used to that, But if you try to listen to one particular side of the story and then try to get involved with that, you are quite scary, So for us, whoever's come in to do business in Myanmar, we will make sure that they will comply with all the international regulations, all the rules and regulations that will be enforced for the investor to do business in Myanmar. So I think these two messages, Debbie will hear clearly of what we are doing and what we will be trying to comply with whoever is coming to do business. So I will just comment on Thompson that he has already given his coverage of what is really happening in Tidua. This is the fact. There is
Okay,
no,
thank you.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Van Mint. Well taken. Okay, I see you stress the importance of having long-term vision, right? And whatever will happen, in the rest of the world, or in the world, okay, we have to think about what we or each of us, okay, need to do today or tomorrow, right? And then maybe to plan for next year or 10 years ahead. I think this is exactly for to facilitate this kind of vision, okay, or planning that we are organizing this workshop to facilitate discussion and exchange of views. I think not only business people, actually people in everybody, okay, from all walks of life, okay, they need to take care of various perspectives. May I see whether other speakers have any response to the questions that's been discussed?
Professor Lee, can I quickly just comment on, I think, some of the discussions earlier? Yeah, I think, I mean, I sympathize, I sort of understand where some investors come from when talk about, oh, they're investing in 2 or 3 years' time or in the longer run. I mean, but the fact is we're not even sure whether the regime could hold elections they pledged by 2023. So I think that's the level of uncertainty we're facing right now. And I think specifically, if you look at the whole Chinese investment landscape, I think some of the private investors have already cancelled their plans, including Alibaba's Ant Group, who basically cancelled the entire more than $70 million investment here in Myanmar into wave money this year. And I think that reflects on the difficulty and the business environment where investors operate in. I think no matter whether you are Myanmar, whether you are from China, or whether you are from the West. But I think that I will just end my last point by saying that specifically on Jagpyu, I think they're now pressing ahead with the environmental impact assessment, which is important and which they need to be transparent about. But I think going back to an earlier 2017 Myanmar Government Commission report by Kofi Annan, the late UN Secretary General, I think the report stressed they need to do a strategic environmental assessment, which is not the same as what they are doing right now. I think a strategic assessment. And I talked to Letitia van den Assum, the Dutch commissioner, earlier this year, right before the coup. I think if you look at the whole conflict area right now with the Arakan army and the Rohingya crisis, all combined, they really need to deal with this project very carefully, because you have basically a tin pot of the risk of conflict, the Rohingya displacements, and also grievances of local communities, combined with the fact that for the port to succeed, you need to have a very good link to China. And if you look at some of the areas, there are now active conflict plot points between some EAOs and the Burmese army. So I think people really have to be very careful to look at what they're getting into on this particular project.
Thank you, Thompson. Well, that actually is a very important reminder that given the difficulties of arising, from the coup, okay, in February 2021, which really change a lot of baselines, okay? But actually a lot of issues are from before, okay? I think they are long-standing issues about policy or governance, or, how we learn, or business, government, society learn how to better understand one another's needs, okay? So I think those are long-term issues, okay, that require our effort. So maybe so we need short-term crisis management, okay, to which I think the ASEAN, okay, it would play, has played and will be playing, okay, a very important part together with all the forces within Myanmar, and also the big powers they are involved, okay, inevitably. So these forces are important, and then these parallel medium-term or longer-term efforts, okay, are always important, because without the coup, okay, these issues are there and they're still there, all right. So I think not everybody would be able to contribute to those the political crisis mitigation, all right. A lot of people may not be able to contribute a lot to that. but maybe all those day-to-day, more long-term issues, maybe more of us can pay more attention to those. Well, with that record, I think we are close to our conclusion time. Okay, so let me thank all our speakers and our participants for contributing to this vibrant discussion and challenging workshop on Myanmar. And we hope that, as I said in my opening, we believe that more discussion should always be better than less. Okay.